Nobody can do everything, but everyone can do something. A very well-known quote that most of us agree with. But I really want to know, honestly, with everyone in the audience, how many of you agree with this quote? Put your hands up in the air. That's like 100%. Wow! One more round of applause. 100% bingo. Now, if 100% of people in this room agree with that, then why do organizations face a dearth of volunteers? Do Indians shy away from volunteering? Let's look for answers in this panel discussion titled Volunteer Shy India, moderated by Mr. Rahul Nainwal, co-founder and director iVolunteer. Rahul, also an alumnus from IRMA, is a TED Fellow and a Ashoka Fellow and has volunteered extensively, including a stint in Sierra Leone. Rahul has also conducted a number of training sessions on experiential learning and creative leadership for volunteers, social entrepreneurs, and employees of companies. Rahul, can you please join us on stage, please? Thank you. We would now like to introduce you to our first panelist, Safeena Hussain. Ms. Safeena Hussain is Executive Director, Educate Girls, born and raised in Delhi. Safeena studied at London School of Economics and Political Science and has 15 years of experience in working with grassroots projects around the world. These include various community projects that she started. Safeena has now settled in India to drive the agenda closest to her heart, that of educating girls. Ma'am, could you please join us on stage? Thank you. Our second panelist is Miss Lynn de Souza. Lynn is a multifaceted media personality, a national tennis champ, wow, who followed up her MBA in marketing with a 25-year career advertising media working for Ogilvy, Gray, and Lintaz. She's one of the most influential women in the country, featuring regularly in the power list of top media titles for several years. She's also a prolific writer and public speaker. Ma'am, can we please have you on stage? Great to have you with us. We now request our guest of honor, Ms. Nandita Das, to join us on stage for the panel discussion and share her experience with us during the course of this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge, warm round of applause to all our panelists. And Rahul, over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Siddharth. So I think today what we really want to discuss is that, of course, we have, hundreds and thousands of volunteers in India, but like what we've been saying, that, people do shy away from it. And also we don't get how do we get to 1 million volunteers in this country, and 1 million volunteers that constantly kind of, talk about it and are able to really add some value in the social sector. So Nandita, just to kind of carry forward the speech that you just made, really wonderful speech. So what would be your thoughts on if you were to create 1 million Nanditas? Yeah. How can we go about doing that?
Yeah, these are complex issues, and there's no one solution. I think there's no one way of doing it, but it's what I was trying to say is this joining the dots, because we all have a circle of influence. Some may have more, some may have less. But I think our own work, if we truly live by a certain value system or a certain philosophy, it does catch on. Others do get inspired, others want to do it. And I think it's like a rippling effect. It does spread. So I think those who do it and should not hesitate to go around talking about it, to inspire more people and expand that circle of volunteering. And I think it will catch on. There are some countries where it is much more a way of life almost. It's something that you do it. Even in our education, I think we need to make volunteering part of our education. You know, you get marks for maths and science and history, and you don't get marks for being a better human being. You don't get marks for doing something good for your society, your world, your nation. So I think if it was part of the course almost, where you go and volunteer for 6 months or a year, let's say after college or during school. If it was built in, if the educationists saw enough merit in doing that, they saw it also as a great learning experience, then probably it would be, because I truly believe once you're exposed to different realities, no person who's sensitive can be untouched by it. No person would not want to just do it further. That, okay, my course finishes, I'll never do volunteering again. I'm very sure that once you do it, you'd want to do it all your life.
Thanks. Safeena, in my 7-8 years of experience of working with volunteers, you know, we make a lot of effort in bringing the volunteer to the NGO, yeah, and then something happens. Sometimes the magic happens, and sometimes it doesn't happen, yeah. In your work, you work with close to 1,400 volunteers, and you also work with both community-based volunteers and corporate volunteers and people from all walks of life that work with you. So what's your magic potion?
I think the magic potion is that you really have to think about volunteering like you would if you were to bring in any person, like a staff member, into the organization. The NGO really does need to take it seriously. If you really have a need for volunteers, then really engage with people. For me, when I started my career, I landed up in San Francisco. I didn't know anyone, and I picked up the yellow pages. And I said, I'll volunteer. You know, I don't know anyone. It's one way to do something. And I emailed 2 organizations. You won't believe, one sent me forms, like at least 10 to 12 pages of forms to fill out. And the other one just called me and said, oh, wow, you want to volunteer? Come by. We'll have coffee and we'll see. And it's 2 different ways of dealing with volunteers, but both of them had very structured approaches. What can you do? What's your skill set? What are our needs? Really finding a match, making a work plan, having as clear an expectation plan, a JD, a job description almost, that you would invest in for, let's say, an employee. Even if it's a 3-week engagement and stuff, to really think it through. And I think that helps, so that the volunteer gets the most that, you know, they want to, and the organization, you know, gets maximum benefit as well.
Thanks. Lynn, a lot of volunteers that, you know, that we want, like those who have lots of skills and experience to share, they are from the corporate sector, yeah? And that's one place that we have found a lot of challenges. Like people, even if they commit, they have lots of deadlines to meet, or some people just don't want to kind of volunteer at all, yeah? What has been your experience, and what will be your advice to us?
Okay. Okay, before I answer that question, I just want to make one statement here, and that is that in the last 1 year, India has seen a fantastic growth in philanthropy and in volunteering. Possibly that is linked to the growth of the social media in India, which has sort of, you know, made people connect the dots in the social media space. And when you're volunteering, you announce it and you talk about it, and then it's shared and so on. There was a study done last November, a very large sample study, which said that 84% of Indians do give to charities and to religious institutions, and as many as 23% of Indians do volunteer properly. Of course, that is what needs to go up to 84%. Now, what does the corporate sector have to do with this, and how can we help? For one thing, in the corporate sector, you're dealing with adults and with skill sets that are already there. I think there are 2 real problems that come up. It is not the lack of spirit or willingness. I have found that if there is a leader in in an organization, and many of you here could bear me out, who is volunteering and sets a good example, many of the youngsters, the juniors and the middle level, also want to volunteer and look good to their boss. That happened to me a lot. So when we set up a volunteering program, in fact with you, and we said we will give paid leave to people to go out into NGOs identified by iVolunteer, go there, work for a month, and you still get your salary, you get your experience, and you come back. People dropped out. I had people putting their hands up to volunteer, but when they went there, their hands fell down because they were just not prepared for what the NGOs didn't know how to handle them, didn't know what to do with them. And they said this is a waste of our time. We want to do something good. So all the NGOs sitting here in this room today, I would tell you that everyone you have the world of India available to you. You have the corporate India available to you. There are organizations like Times of India and all are doing something about this, but you have to also get your act together. I also run 2 NGOs and I know we have to get our act together that when people come forward to volunteer, we make use of their time and we do it properly, which is why I'm very happy that you're also giving an award today for the NGO who uses volunteers well. I would say that is the most important way to get volunteers from the corporate sector onto you, because the willingness is there. Every corporate company today wants to encourage CSR, volunteering. You know, you just pick up the phone and they want to do it. But they say, show me how. And when I send my person there, is he going to actually be used? That's the answer you have to give them.
So I think this question is probably to all of you. So in the US, yeah, the contribution of volunteering is kind of measured in terms of, you know, dollars, yeah, and they kind of every year measure how many millions of people are actually volunteering. Then they create a shadow price, they multiply that, and they say, okay, in our country the contribution of volunteers is like maybe $50 billion, yeah. So do you think, I mean, something like this would be a good idea, or should we put price to this, and how do we actually make it, you know, make it popular like an iPhone, you know, that everybody wants to have one and, you know, do this?
I'd like to take a crack at that. I think Nandita sort of mentioned this about educational institutions and stuff, and I do think that there are certain concrete steps that can be taken. For example, I'll start with the university stuff. In the US, if you're applying for a college, your SAT scores are one thing, but your volunteer experience counts for a huge amount. Corporates, if you're going in for a job, your volunteer experience counts for a huge amount. Like if you've worked in Somalia or, you know, Sierra Leone or Ecuador,